Cold alone does not kill. Wind does. On the Great Plains, there are no mountains to break the jet stream. When Arctic air moves south, it accelerates across flat land like water through a funnel. At this temperature, still air is survivable with protection, but when wind reaches 60 miles per hour, it strips heat from the body faster than fire can replace it. Nomadic tribes used the tipi, a brilliant mobile structure. Its cone shape sliced through wind. Its bison hides insulated the interior. But tipis depend on fire, and fire loses against constant wind. Heat escapes quickly when there is no thermal mass to hold it. For nomads following bison, mobility was survival. But for agricultural tribes like the Mandan and Hidatsa, mobility was not an option. Their lives were anchored to the land. Thousands of pounds of stored corn and beans were buried in cache pits. Fields needed tending. Villages were permanent. They could not run from winter. They had to defeat it. Minus 30 degrees. On the open plains of the Missouri River Valley, the wind does not blow. It hunts. It sweeps uninterrupted across hundreds of miles of flat land, pulling Arctic air south like a drawn blade. Breath freezes. Wood cracks. Exposed skin burns in seconds. Above ground, winter is chaos. But beneath a low dome of frozen earth, something impossible happens. While the air outside collapses toward 30 degrees Celsius, inside the temperature holds steady near freezing, sometimes warmer. A difference of nearly 70 degrees, not protected by steel, not insulated by modern foam, but by soil. This is the Earth Lodge, a semi-underground home engineered by the Mandan and Hidatsa peoples. It was not a cave. It was not a shelter of desperation. It was a thermodynamic machine. And it worked. The breakthrough was simple. The sky is unstable. The ground is not. While air temperature above the prairie can swing violently between extremes, soil below the frost line remains stable. Just 3 to 6 feet beneath the surface, temperature changes slow dramatically. At that depth, the Earth holds steady near 10 to 13 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. That stability was the key. By excavating a circular pit several feet deep, these ancient engineers stepped into a different climate zone. They weren't hiding underground. They were accessing thermal stability. The Earth Lodge began with a wide excavation, sometimes 40 to 60 feet in diameter. This pit formed the basin of a home. Walls rose from the edge. A dome-shaped roof sealed the top. The result was half buried in the soil, not exposed to the wind, anchored to thermal mass. Soil does more than block wind. It stores heat. During the day, the central fire radiates warmth into the interior space. That warmth is absorbed by the dense earthen walls. Physics calls this thermal mass. It takes time for heat to move through soil, up to 18 hours for surface temperature swings to penetrate thick earth walls. This delay is called thermal lag. For the families inside, it meant protection. When a blizzard arrived suddenly at night, the interior did not instantly drop in temperature. The walls remembered the fire of the afternoon. They slowly released stored warmth back into the room. Instead of sharp spikes of heat and cold, the lodge maintained a smooth rhythm. The earth moderated winter's violence. The Earth Lodge was circular for more than tradition. A circle encloses the maximum volume with the minimum surface area. Less exposed surface means fewer opportunities for heat to escape. There were no sharp corners where cold air could collect, no flat walls for wind to strike directly. The dome shape forced winter gales to glide over the surface rather than slam into it. And then winter did something unexpected. Snow accumulated on the rounded roof. Instead of crushing the structure, it became insulation. Snow is filled with trapped air pockets. As it piled up, it formed a second thermal blanket, The storm tried to bury the lodge. It only made it warmer. Building underground without metal tools required endurance. The soil was often frozen or packed with hard mineral layers. The primary digging tool was not steel. It was bone. The broad shoulder blade of a bison was shaped into a spade and tied to wooden handles with rawhide. To break frost, builders sometimes used fire. They burned large blazes over the ground to soften it slightly, then scraped away thawed layers inch by inch. Excavation was slow, rhythmic, communal. What looked primitive was organized engineering. Each basket of soil removed brought them closer to thermal stability. Once the pit was complete, the structural frame began. 4 massive central posts were set into the ground. These pillars supported heavy horizontal beams. Around them, dozens of thick logs formed a circular skeleton. Up to 100 or more large timbers were required for a single lodge. Each beam had to align precisely. Too much weight in one direction could collapse the structure. The roof was layered carefully. First, thick primary beams, then a lattice of willow branches, then mats of grass. Finally, heavy packed earth. The weight of wet soil created immense downward pressure, but when distributed properly, that weight locked the structure together. The lodge did not resist gravity. It used it. The heavier the roof, the more stable the frame became. At the top of the dome, a central smoke hole allowed ventilation. Below it, a fire pit burned continuously through winter. Sleeping areas were arranged along the perimeter. Storage platforms were elevated to avoid moisture. Entrance tunnels were angled downward and often faced away from prevailing winds. Cold air settled lower in the entry passage, while warm air remained inside the main chamber. The lodge created its own microclimate. Outside, chaos. Inside, controlled warmth. In Mandan and Hidatsa culture, women were the primary builders. They owned the lodges. They prepared materials for months, drying grass, curing hides, selecting proper timber. Knowledge of load balance and layering was passed through generations. The home was not only a shelter, it was an inheritance of engineering. Assembly of the massive frame often took just over a week, because preparation had already been perfected. The Earth Lodge was not simply architecture, it was a philosophy. Instead of fighting winter on the surface, these communities changed their relationship with the planet. They did not attempt to overpower the wind. They withdrew into stability. They turned soil into insulation, snow into protection, weight into strength. Today, as modern societies search for sustainable housing and energy efficiency, the Earth Lodge stands as a reminder: the most advanced technology is not always new. Sometimes it has been beneath our feet all along. When the sky becomes hostile, survival may depend on listening to the ground.